on here. Here we go. So this is July 30th. I don't know how that happened, but here we are. It's the end of July for AKV3. Welcome everybody for jumping on. And again, for those that have been hanging out for too long, I am embarrassed and apologize that somehow our meeting invite was not the regular 10 o'clock, which is what it should be. So got a couple things to try and touch on. We've got the AEDC luncheon I want to touch on briefly in a second when I get to my updates. The August 8th planning, the reverse pitch event in early September, and some of the AKV3 planning are some of the things that are on my short list following up on a discussion last week. But let's go ahead and do quick introductions. And as you do, anything that has surfaced in the last week you think is kind of interesting and noteworthy about this next Alaska discussion we're having. And if there's something else you want to make sure we put on the agenda, if you'd bring that up. So we'll run this down. I'm just getting my participant list visible and we'll just run down for that. So Andy, if you wouldn't mind kicking it off, and welcome, and what's going on in your world?
I have been changing gears to my fall, which is teaching healthcare management courses. So my radar has been focused more on a completely different world, but I'm still focused on the healthcare industry or industry stuff, and tying in, I will be tying in some health tie connections there. So I guess right now I'm still looking at what's going on in terms of healthcare here in Alaska, and what's not going on. And I'm also paying attention to what's going on in Anchorage with the latest Delta variant spike and how that's going to impact with new leadership here in town. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out going forward. So, but just trying to get my feet wet again. I've been away and distracted for the last month, I guess. So here I am back, trying to jump back in.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us today. Bradley, what's happening with you? Let's jump down.
Hey, sorry there. I'm just in the process of texturing a wall here, so sorry about the lack of mute here.
Oh, no worries. Good to see you, and I love that cloud in the background.
Thank you. It's incomplete wall texture so far, but we're getting there. I've been focused on getting spooled up with the pre-work for Launch Alaska's cohort. Happy to be one of 2 Alaska-based companies in that cohort. Excited to see where it goes. And yeah, just getting ready for some visitors here, getting the space set up, and also planning 2 demo projects, one with Kondiganak and the other hopefully with Red Cross here. So trying to demonstrate viability of drones to move physical things around, and hopefully pretty close to demoing that stuff.
Nice, congratulations. And I'm still pondering the discussion from last week or 2 weeks ago, and I've been pondering whether or not we need to consider another drone advocacy group to compete with a Quasi. I'll let you ponder that issue.
The big table, we can all be there. I guess we'll just see who shows up and does the work and who's moving things along.
Yeah, there you go. Good deal. Dick, thanks for joining us again today. Anything new with you today, and what you've been seeing in the world? Good timing, wasn't that, Dick? Oh, you're going to have to unmute yourself, I think.
Sorry about that. Caught me with my mouth full. I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, good to be with this group again. I think it's my 2nd meeting, maybe 3rd. I'm not sure. Anyway, teaching at APU, as Kai knows, and maybe others. And actually getting started, Kai, you'll be interested in this. They got me teaching education foundations over in the other Institute of Culture, and so that with the new person has taken Jan Littlebear's place. So there's just 3 of us this year. So I'm back in education. That's where I came from, 18 years there, but also teaching in the business group, and then consulting work's keeping me busy. And yeah, glad to be here, and wish I was in Valdez with Ryan Whitten.
There you go. Sounds good. Thanks for joining us. Margot, thanks for joining us. If you wouldn't mind, just an introduction and what you've got going on, and we're going to circle back to the discussion with you on the reverse pitch and some of the other activities after we get past introductions.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. I'm down in the Kenai, which is why I have my video off so that I can continue to hear everybody and they won't freeze up. We're down here doing some fishing. So I work at the Center for Economic Development, and I do a lot of work with entrepreneurship, teaching and programming, and strategic doing as well. So I'm really excited to see where this group is kind of moving forward on a couple of different initiatives, including the reverse pitch. I'm excited to hear more about that. What we've got going on right now is kind of just prepping for the fall with our Upstart Alpha cohort. We'll be starting up in kind of the late fall, and then trying to do some other programming to really help people go through either Upstart Alpha or other programs. So kind of this is the time to gear up and kind of get all of our ducks in a row, if you will. And there's also, as many of you know, a lot of EDA funding coming out. So we've been working a lot with clients from across the state who are excited to either prepare or potentially submit applications for some of that pretty large scale EDA funding. I think it's about $3 billion. So we've been in a lot of meetings and things around that EDA funding. So that's what I'm up to as of late, but excited to hear what everybody else has going on.
Great. Thanks, Margot, for joining us, especially while you're down there. Pasquale, good morning. What's new with you?
Good morning. Trying to round up the week and get some time off this weekend. I'm with you, like, oh my gosh, July already gone. So basically we have 1 month left in summer. So try to find a balance work and life. But so far so good. Nothing new this week when it comes to AKV3 in terms of what I saw that could steer or could create an entry in the conversation this week. So that's all for me in this side of the world.
Right, thanks, Maxwell. And Sarah, good to figuratively see you again. How have you been, and what's new?
Hey guys, good morning. Nothing new for me either, honestly. I'm just ramping back up because I took a week off last week, so getting back up to speed with everything. Nice to see everyone though.
Glad you're here. Tracy, how are you today? And anything new for the group about what's happening in Alaska?
I have to smile, Dick. You made me chuckle because after teaching in the business department for 16 years, I'm teaching for the second time in psychology this fall. I'm teaching ethics of professional practice to the PsyD and MSCP. So it's weird to be over there, having never taught there until after I left APU. But apparently the business department doesn't need my skills at the moment. I am increasingly concerned about the Delta variant COVID-19, what the state isn't doing, and the way that the state leadership is pointing us in the direction that they are. That we were #1 in absolutely, Dick. We were #1, in vaccination rates for a while, and now the last I read we were 29th, and that our mitigation response and our response to the science is on par with Florida and Mississippi and Missouri and some of those states that are seeing such enormous spikes, and so are we. So I'm just concerned about that, and the underlayer for that remains for me, how do we converse about difficult topics and the way that we are creating misinformation or partial information, and the upside and the downside of headlines and social media and information. I don't know how that dovetails into what this group is doing. I mean, I think it does. I think it's really critically important when we talk about You know, what does Alaska look like beyond extractive industry? Not no extractive industry, but beyond it. And how do we have those conversations? We haven't been able to have those conversations. I mean, you just have to look at the state budget and the permanent fund and a conversation about, God forbid, taxes and some other form of revenue other than oil. I'm churning in that area without anything useful other than a lot of energy and angst, but I figure it'll go somewhere soon. So anyway, happy last day of July. Yeah, my thought is I look at the garage and the stuff we've been staging for clean out and the donations we've been running and the things we've been doing and the grill my son acquired that he hasn't done squat with, thinking I need the garage back in a month. And I hate that point of our time in the summer. So I'm with you.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, Ryan, it looks like you've popped in from beautiful Valdez. That picture you posted this morning was typical, incredible Valdez. I hope the weather's better than it is here in Anchorage. How are you today?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I am doing really well. I've been really enjoying my time in Valdez. I apologize for any background noise that's going on around me. I am in downtown and there's a diesel truck going by. Hold on. I'm in downtown and I have been really impressed with, I've been through Valdez before, coming the other way from Whittier to Valdez, coming back this direction from Paxton on down to Valdez. Thompson Pass is just incredibly beautiful. The first day it was socked in with clouds, couldn't see anything. About 2 days into being here, we got clear skies and sunny, which was yesterday. And so we went back up, got to see the full beauty of the pass and all the glaciers and had a great time. Got to go see some walrus feeding over at the sea lions feeding over at the fisheries. I have been really impressed with the way that Valdez has embraced tourism. They're very different than the typical cruise ship stops. And so it's not a whole bunch of cookie cutter, same old stores that are around, but it's a bunch of mom and pop stores that have just sort of organically grown. But they've done a really good job of organically embracing tourists while not kind of succumbing to them. And so I've been really enjoying seeing what Valdez has done and the community that it is, and kind of getting to watch in the morning as the municipal crews go around and like clean stuff up and just kind of get ready for folks to come in for the day, and the team effort that it takes to make this place. But it's been really cool to see.
Great, thanks for joining us. And you touch on, I think, a really fascinating issue, Next Alaska related, which is this whole concept of over-tourism. And there's been some posts that I've shared of information. I think it's a really vital discussion for us to have when we think about how does tourism add value to Alaska down the road for Alaska and Alaskans, as opposed to just simply being another extractive industry for others to come. And I think Valdez, from what you're relating, is an important data point in that. Let's see, did I miss anybody? I don't think I did. Okay, a couple quick things from my perspective, and then I really, in the interest of time, want to jump into a short update on the August 8th event, but then really want to dive in with Margot and some of the work there on the reverse pitch. So first off, I put an ask out there. I went ahead and bought a virtual table at the AADC 3-year luncheon that's next week. It's August 4th at 11:30. I think it's absolutely essential that for those of us that are interested in this topic about Next Alaska, that we need to understand what people are thinking about and what they see in terms of that. I don't think the AADC 3-year outlook is necessarily the real be-all end-all of looking ahead, but it does represent what a significant group of people are thinking, and I think we need to understand that. So at any rate, I've got, I think, 8 tickets in there. I would like to know, and if you could, in the chat, let me know if you would like one of those tickets. They're already bought and paid for. I just need to know who wants them, because I have to turn in names and email addresses for that. I need to turn that in today. So if you're interested in attending that, please put your name and in the chat, and hopefully we'll fill up all of those spots. This again is August 4th, which I think is like Wednesday, maybe. I'm sure it's August 4th. It's 11:30. It's a virtual Zoom meeting. I was hoping it was a face-to-face one because they've been, if nothing else, a good event. There's a nice keynote speaker that they've got on there talking about kind of the, how to think about the future. So like I said, I think it's a really valuable data point to attend. And I'll put it out to this group first, and then well, go jiggle. Okay, enough on that. Second is, I was on the phone this morning with Commonwealth North. They were talking about the latest survey done by Dittman Research and with Matt Larkin, looking at the issue of fiscal policies in the state. And the details about the fiscal issue, POMV, the governor's plans doesn't matter at the moment. What matters for us is to realize that between 50% and 2/3, almost 65% of people in Alaska don't know anything about the issues going on with fiscal issues, or they've got the wrong information. And I raise this only because of the discussion we had the last week or the week before about one of the things I think we need to figure out how to do is just simply engage more people in this discussion of what's next Alaska. There's a whole bunch of folks that don't even know what's going on right now, much less what's going on down the road. And it was surprising to realize on something that's gotten so much attention for those of us that pay attention on these issues, how few people actually know about what's going on. That was both in Anchorage, but also across the state in that area. And if folks don't know or don't have accurate information, kind of to Tracy's point, then it's really hard to have a good conversation. But those numbers of people uninformed or with the wrong information was stunning. And I think it shows an opportunity to figure out how to do that. And, quite frankly, their plan is to have more community discussions. And for those of us who've been around for 20 years, we've been doing these community discussions on fiscal plans over and over and over and over again. And I'm really kind of surprised that they're going to try and do it again, because I think, somebody should have figured out it doesn't work. Delta variant has really got me, like other people, really scratching my head about this fall. And I think folks need to also keep in mind that Delta is not the last letter in the alphabet. I'll leave it at that for the moment. EDA is huge. This is billions of dollars. It is a one-time massive opportunity for our state. If there's any one thing I'm really looking at with AKV3 right now, it's, how do we potentially help influence how we think about that money and what it gets used for. My biggest concern, I was on the phone yesterday with UAF folks, is that folks don't have the capacity to figure out what to do with all this money and how to take advantage of it. I'm afraid it'll just get sucked in and used in that area. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Those are the things on my mind from the last week, and we'll go from there. So let's jump ahead here for just a few minutes. Ryan has been circulating a proposal for the event on August 8th at the 3rd and Ingra site with Heritage Land Bank and an AKV3. There's a proposed agenda. There's a little bit of a blend of 3rd and Ingra, master plan, what that happens, but also a lot of discussion about AKV3, what we're doing, what are some of the challenges that matter in there. And Ryan, do you want to kind of pick it up from there in terms of, have you kind of landed on, from the comments, a time and a format of that? And do you have any asks specifically for what we need next to move this ahead? Because of the timing of this, which is just less than a week and a half, I kind of want to land on a date and a time so we can at least start ramping up some publicity about this event.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think the date of the 8th is still a great date for folks. I saw that there was some feedback on the time. I tentatively proposed 10 to 2, but I just wanted to do a quick pass with folks here because I think that it's important that we get some of the core group involved and on Sunday mornings. There's usually some brunch happening. There's usually some church services that are starting to get out at about that time. But I want to be really intentional about setting the table and framing this event so that everybody who wants to be there can be there. And so the risk that we run by pushing it back is that we then open things up and chew into people's afternoon. But I think that we could be onto something if we were to say push back from 10 to 11. You know, I get a little bit cautious about pushing back farther than that. But I'm really hoping to just kind of get some feedback to see how are people feeling about that time. Do we just want to tie that down? I'd love to have that settled by the end of today if we walked away with one thing. Otherwise, the flow of the event, as Kai mentioned, it's a bit of a blend of talking about the Heritage Land Bank and the Third and Ingra Farm site, talking about the greater potential of that site beyond just farming, and then talking about some of the meatier issues with Alaska version 3 and what we've been looking at for some of the core purposes. How do we use that planning toolkit that was brought up, I think, by Kai a few weeks ago. And so I think that we're pulling some of the elements of that planning toolkit, looking at what assets we have, what are some of the value genetics that we have as an organization, and giving people an opportunity to bring that and speak to that. So that's a long-winded way of saying, please go check out the linked document that has the agenda or proposed agenda. I've got some flexibility, but I am going to need to print off some stuff for the event itself, so then we can do some sticky notes and flurries and that sort of thing. I'm going to be pulling from some of the IDEO design thinking sticky note swarm ideas and trying to get some folks to put some ideas on the board. But I'm also hoping to have some slower and more intentional discussion come out of that event as well. And so at this point, does anybody have any quick feedback for me on the time? If you have had a chance to look at the planning notes, any feedback on the flow of the event? Any requests for food? I'm planning on bringing some food for people to eat. I think that everybody eats, and it's a really great way to help people to quickly connect. And so I'm also taking requests for food.
I will say I'm a pretty late starter on Sundays, but that's just because Sundays are my one true day off on a week. So later in the afternoon usually works for me, but I do understand that other people have things going on. Food, yes, no requests. I do swarm a veggie tray if they're there, but other than that, yeah, I think what I'm confused about still, Ryan, is the overall purpose of the event. Is it really just like a connecting, networking, and then to describe sort of like the purpose or ideated purpose of the site? Or could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I really, thanks for asking. That's a good question. I'm hoping I can circle back around and get a little clarity from you. Is 11 too early? Is 12 really the time that you are awake and we need to push it back then? But if you were to pick here an ideal time to get things kicked off, when would that be? Yeah, there is no perfect time, agreed. So the hope is not to do a deep dive on the Heritage Land Bank site, but to just touch on what the site is, help people to get a basic awareness of what's going on at the site, why people are working at that location, and also to help make that mental connection between the work that we're trying to do with Alaska version 3. Because really the Third and Ingra site is a small example of what I see as larger projects for Alaska version 3 in the future. And it's something that I've just been pushing on, but I think that it connects to other opportunities that exist in our state and areas for other people to be able to push on as well. And that's not to imply that I'm the only person pushing on that site. There's a lot of people who are working on that thing. But I'm really just trying to get people to see what's happening there and use that as a, you know, the space, you know, it's a physical space that kind of matches the mental headspace for the concepts that we're trying to explore with Alaska version 3. I think that's really the larger connection that I see there. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So Ryan, I'm just going to put it out there in terms of the time discussion. You know, my thought is right now, given where we're at, that 4 hours is probably going to stretch on into. It seems like a lot of time given the where we're at with the detailed work that we could do at the meeting, as well as just all the dialogue. I'm going to just kind of throw it out there that, to me, doing like a 12 to 2:30 might be actually enough time that there can be some focus and engagement without it being so long that it starts diluting. That's just my gut feel.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, I think it's nice to have some space, but I figure that folks, if they want to take some more time or hang around, that they're always welcome to do so, or can show up a little bit early if they want to do so as well. And so there's no reason to force it to stay longer.
Yeah, my view is stuff expands to fill the time you give it, but in this case, it might dilute the energy. And I just, and in terms of my church schedule, I get done about 11:15. So, you know, I could be at something at 12. I mean, I'll skip and be a heathen for a day to get down when needed. And I mean that in all kindness, but at any rate, that was just, you know, a counter proposal for folks to consider, is to still keep the afternoon, mid-afternoon, late afternoon free by getting done by 2 or 2:30, but perhaps moving it up that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'm all for shortening that up to 12 to 2. I think that sounds good to me. I think what I was trying to balance is just we've had some of these longer drawn out discussions that seems like by the end of some of these calls that we're kind of starting to chew into things, but haven't quite had the full time to be able to do so. And so I wanted to hold space for that. But I think 12 to 2, yeah, 12 to 2 with lingerers welcome. I think that sounds great. Well, I'm not going to be back into service or really able to push on things much more until probably about Sunday. But if you guys are able to help raising awareness, how do we want to go about telling people about this thing and getting folks there? Do we think this is a good thing for just a general community discussion? Is this really targeted to key people? I'm open to any ideas there.
Couple quick thoughts I'll throw out there. One, I think it'd be nice to have some sort of flyer-ish kind of thing. And I know Sarah did a really nice job with the writing promo. We can probably, you know, I could imagine recycling that with some changes on that to have some thing send out. You know, my initial thought is to send this out to the email list that we have, which is about 65 or 70 folks, as well as the social media groups that we have on Facebook and LinkedIn, and try and use this as an opportunity for some of the folks that have been circling in different orbits close in or a little bit further out, and try and get that, you know, group of folks that have expressed interest in this to show up and give them a chance to get an update on what we've been working on, as well as get some of their thoughts on what we do next. So I'm thinking, you know, flyer-ish kind of thing, that email list and the two groups, and to really kind of put a push on those folks that have expressed some interest at different levels and try and get them to show up for a few minutes.
I think that makes sense to me. Well, I will, if anybody wants to jump on a flyer, feel free to do so, but otherwise I'll start working on that over the weekend as I'm able to get a little time to throw out that thing. And until then, feel free to start sharing the event and where it's going to be at. There is unfortunately not a physical like street number. 3rd and Ingra is really the closest designation that we can give for this location. And so there's now a fence on the site and a couple Connex containers so people can have an idea that they're in the right space. But there is not a specific street address for folks.
Okay, great, Ryan. Thanks for keeping this thing moving. Again, the link to the planning document I put in the chat a few minutes ago. If anybody wants to circle back on that, it has some more details about the purpose and the proposed flow of that event if you're looking for more information on that. Anything further as far as questions for Ryan or the group about this, or proposals for the event? Otherwise, we'll move on. Going once, going twice. Thank you, Ryan. So let's circle back around now on the reverse pitch idea, and Margot's online with us specifically on this. And just to kind of frame this, one of the projects that we've talked about, and I admit that I've been really pushing this rope because I kind of have a deep mental rut that I'm in on this, has been for something in the beginning of September related to raising the awareness in Alaska of the investable challenges that matter. That is, what are the things that Alaska could be working on that are challenges that are potentially important to Alaska, like melting permafrost and the impact that it has, but they're also really potentially valuable. Alaska is going to spend a bunch of money on things like trying to improve healthcare, trying to deal with infrastructure that is being damaged by melting permafrost, investing in energy transitions, helping rural Alaska get off of diesel fuel, trying to deal with investments to support, good tourism, a lot of different areas. And so the idea has been that with our now missing the original Arctic Innovation Competition, which happened in the beginning of the fall, we now have this big gap in our innovation ecosystem at the beginning of the fall that helps orient students, startups, innovative people to what they could and should be working on. And I think there's an opportunity for Alaska V3 to help bring visibility to the big challenges that matter to Alaska, but they're also investable, interesting, and they represent the opportunity to solve those challenges and create solutions that not only help Alaska and our next economy, our future communities, but they also become the source of exportable solutions and the kind of economic activity that we can be building. For example, if we build new hydrogen-related fuel based upon ammonia from the North Slope, that we could be exporting that and creating a new economy based on not only helping ourselves, but then exporting the result of that to other folks. So Margot and I have had some discussions about how we could potentially do this event in the early fall. I've proposed either the 1st or 2nd or the 8th or 9th. Those would be the 1st and 2nd Wednesday, Thursday options of the month. Or there was also a proposal to do something on, I think it's Saturday, the 11th. Kind of 9/11 is kind of an auspicious date, but nonetheless, it'd be a weekend. And so we wanted to kick this around with you to see about your feedback and ideas around doing this and how it could fit your collective interest in this next Alaska, but also feeding the ecosystem. So let me first ask Margot to jump in and share kind of where you're at on this idea. I know you've had a chance to maybe ponder this to see, does it fit? How does it fit? How it might be supportive of the other ecosystem projects that are going on. And if you've got some suggestions on what you might suggest we think about and how to do this and when to do this. Any thoughts from what you've pondered, Margot?
Yeah, so one of the first things, the more that I talk about sprints, think about sprint type processes, which I would consider this reverse pitch event to be one of. I know that there's a lot of excitement, but it's got to be narrow enough that people can wrap their heads around what they're supposed to do. So I think that starting small, just like in some of you are familiar with strategic doing, it's better to take, I think, some small steps and have people learn a process and leave a reverse pitch event feeling like we did something. It's not like, oh, wow, we have this great idea and it's ready to commercialize right away. But I think it's important to focus maybe on one area. And I know that Kai and I had originally talked about bringing in either private sector businesses in that particular area or maybe like public organizations or researchers or things like that. So that I think is important to focus down wherever possible. I also think the timing's great. I know that there are going to be a lot of activities happening around Startup Week and Startup Weekend in early November. I know that, personally, we have our Upstart Alpha cohort starting around the same time in early November. And then I know that there's other programming within the ecosystem that's happening, I would say mid to late September or early October. So I feel like this would kick everything off. And I'm really excited by what it could look like. But I think the biggest thing for me is the need for focusing in either on verticals or on maybe a particular industry or larger challenge area, just so that people can get excited and kind of wrap their head around it before they kind of dive into whatever the programming looks like for the reverse pitch. As for dates, I wasn't sure if this group had kind of come to a consensus on some that worked better, or if people were kind of all over the place. I think that the first and the second, I mean, personally worked a little bit better for me, or the 11th. I did have some standing board meetings on the 8th and the 9th, but I was curious to hear if there had been a sense of if a particular industry or a major challenge that we would want to focus on for like this first type of event.
Gotcha. So I'd be interested in folks' comment. I'd just say that we have not landed on a date or a vertical at this point. I'd put it out there, but there hasn't been any consensus on that. I think we can kind of drive it towards that answer of, does it make more sense to do it as a late afternoon, early evening, which I think lends itself to potentially the first or the second, or if we did it on an afternoon, it would be more like the 11th in there. You know, I had originally, you know, but I always chew off way too much, been thinking about, you know, having a multiple sector reverse pitch to give people a broader cross section of that. But I think, you know, what you're raising is a valuable perspective, that maybe we do a little bit better job on one of the verticals, but we've not had any discussion about which vertical that would be. So I'd invite other people with either questions about this, or if you have specific thoughts about a date time that would be good for reverse pitch. And let me just clarify, just in case anyone's, you know, got this question already queued up, what is a reverse pitch? A reverse pitch event is a event that has been done in many areas around the country to help have people that have problems share what they are, and kind of like a pitch, you're actually trying to pitch that in a way that causes people to want to get interested in your problem. Private companies do this. They will pitch their problems, and they're trying to incentivize and encourage people to want to work on their problems. Universities are doing this now as a way to help get university students interested in different problem sets. So where a normal pitch event is somebody who already has a solution or has a startup company, and they're trying to pitch it to investors or to customers, this is the reverse. This is basically the person with the problem saying, here's the problem I need solved. I want to try and make this as enticing and interesting so that somebody will come solve it. And later it leads to it. So it's a flip of the whole equation, but it's all part of this open innovation strategy. So enough of that. I'm curious for other people's feedback on, you know, is there a vertical focus that you think, you know, is interesting? Is there a date time format you think would work out better for that? Thoughts from folks?
Can you clarify what you mean by vertical focus, Kai?
Yeah, so, you know, when I originally was thinking about this, I was thinking about inviting Launch Alaska to come and talk about the different energy transitions, and Health Tie to come and talk about the healthcare challenges, and Spruce Root to come and talk about tourism and rural communities, and Alaska Ocean Cluster to come and talk about blue ocean economy issues. So each of those are kind of different verticals in terms of energy. You could also imagine the food collective coming and talking about food security issues. So the vertical focus would be, do we want to do energy, food, tourism, healthcare? Do we want to pick one of those areas? Or, you know, we want to have more of a smorgasbord kind of approach where we had a pitch from, you know, 2 or 3 of those different groups. But Margot, I think, is advocating correctly that maybe we focus in on one of those different vertical areas as opposed to hitting multiple ones.
Hi, this is Dick. Ryan, go ahead.
I I guess a couple of thoughts that come to mind for me. September 11th gives me weird vibes. I just feel like that is just not the right day because of some of the other associations that people have with that day. To have another event, I think it's just going to make some mental connections that are not what we're looking for. Maybe that's just me being, yeah, with the 20th year and the 20 years of war that have spawned out of that. And there's just a lot that goes into that I think we should probably sit with as a nation. The I am struggling a little bit with the thought of trying to pull into separate verticals or pick a single one. I think the question that is kind of coming together in my mind is, are we trying to elevate a specific project, or are we trying to elevate a specific way of thinking? And I think that if we want to push forward and make a lot of progress on a specific project, then we need to narrow in on one, we need to pick a vertical, and we need to just get everybody to throw their thinking power at it. If we're trying to get people to shift their thinking, then I think that instead we could pull in all four, or all the different verticals. Perhaps we could find a community that has a specific problem that is tied in, that that vertical support organization would be interested in playing with, or could see some traction being made there. But I think that the thing that I get really excited about isn't necessarily the vertical, but the shift in thinking towards, what can we do so that we can build Alaskan capacity to make an impact there, so that we can develop the workforce, the infrastructure, the tools that we need to be able to make progress, and shifting towards that long-term sustainable thinking. And if I think if that was a vertical, I don't, that would be the kind of the thing that I would be the most interested in pushing on. But I definitely agree that then opens us up to not making a ton of meaningful progress on a specific project, or maybe not being meaty enough for somebody to really sink the teeth into. So that's a couple things that are rattling around in my head.
Kai, this is Dick.
Yes, sir.
Just listening to what Ryan's saying and what you're asking, I'll go to Margot or others here. Are you looking at this as more of a test run to help people get acquainted with this reverse pitch and looking at one of these verticals? Or is this more of a, we've done this a lot, here's how we do this, and showing you what we've already, building on something that's been done in the past?
Yeah, so quickly, we've not done a reverse pitch type of event in the past. I've done 2 prior versions of community challenge type activities, trying to identify challenges and then trying to engage them with students. So this is an evolution of some different efforts to try and raise the visibility of challenges that matter in our state. I would say in this case, the ideal outcome in my mind of this event is that we get some students that have senior projects, capstone projects, student research projects. We get those students interested in some of these projects so that they go off and use their class projects, entrepreneurship classes and capstone projects to actually choose to work on some of these, that we actually steer people in the direction of awareness and working on some of the problems that matter, that perhaps we incentivize a few startups that are looking for a more engageable pilot project area to work on, that we steer them in support of those projects. And we maybe identify a couple companies or organizations that are willing to provide their support to people that want to work on the problems that they're working on at this point. So I'm trying to help steer a little bit what people engage on this fall, because there'll be a whole bunch of activities like the Upstart Alpha, the startup weekends, some hackathons. I want to influence what people work on so that they work on the problems that matter in the state. But we've not done this before. This is kind of first time out, trying to see if we can help set that agenda. And Andy in particular has voiced, this idea in the past about, how can we help create kind of a package of stuff for all the entrepreneurial classes that are going on that kind of helps them see some of the opportunities that folks might choose from, and some of the tools and resources and support that they might engage in. And I see this as maybe a way of helping build that package, if you will, of here are the investable challenges that matter, to try and steer a few people in that direction.
Hi, can I ask a question about framing of some of this? My academic background is mainly international economic development, and so I always zoom back with these sort of things to, what are the challenges that matter? We're throwing that term around, and there's some organizations that have gotten some framing around that's endured over the years. Probably the SDGs that came out of the Millennium Development Goals, the UN's essential metrics of human development that apply pretty universally across culture and across country. Looks like screen sharing is not on, so I can't bring up the slide of them, but essentially looking at things like hunger alleviation, infant mortality, all these things that aren't directly economic, but essentially have an outcome with how people are living. And I wonder if that's a starting place to say, where are the worst areas in Alaska in terms of the standard of living that people have? Where are the worst areas in terms of environmental degradation? And how can fixing those things translate into a viable company that's going to be profitable? And I just wonder if there's a bit of a formula that we can come up with to qualify those things.
Yeah, I think, two things there. One is, and I'm trying to find a link to it that I've not shared yet. We started building a couple, 2 or 3 weeks ago, a deck on the challenges that matter, because the conversation had led us to wanting to curate those challenges. So there's a starting deck in there I'll find in a moment. The second is, you'll see that I've put together a draft form that I did just put in the chat, that is a way of trying to ask people to submit what they would like to pitch on. And to everyone's point, I think to a certain degree, in the end, what matters is who wants to actually show up and pitch their problems and their challenges per se. So to a certain degree, I see this as an opportunity. On one hand, we might want to choose a vertical, or we might want to have multiple verticals and try and promote a mindset of engaging in the challenges. In the end, though, what really matters is who really wants to show up and pitch their challenge. And I think at the same time, who wants to come willing to say, this challenge is important enough that, we're willing to support and invest in somebody that wants to work on this challenge. So to a certain degree, I think it's kind of a self-selected thing, that if we want to take this approach, we can see who wants to show up. If all 4 of those hubs, Launch Alaska, Spruce Root, whatever, if they all wanted to show up, then, that would be one thing. But in reality, it may only be 1 or 2 that actually want to show up and pitch their challenges. So that may somewhat answer it. But I think your point of SDGs is really valuable, that there is a broad framing of that. I do have screen sharing on if you want to share that. But anyway, a couple thoughts on there. I'll try and find the link on the list of challenges we started working on before also.
When it comes to this is Pascual here. When it comes to the pitch, we are basically pitching a problem, and we are presenting it in a way that people come up with solutions. And it comes to mind too simple, because I agree with you that if we overcomplicate that, it may be way too big to actually tackle it from any front. 2 simple approaches could be 2 problems that we have. One of them is, hey, this is the current situation of Alaska, in a really, really simplify, or maybe oversimplify, but simple way, just to say we have an issue, meaning that we don't know where we are going. And the second one will be, we as an organization, we would like to be able to create the environment for that discussion to happen. That would be the second problem within quote, like, how do you think we can make this better, faster, quicker? Because it will be ideal for us to grow as an organization. 3,000 members 3 weeks from now. Okay, the bigger that we grow, the faster we grow, the more reach we'll have, which means that we will achieve one of the goals that we have, which is create this conversation going on. If we don't grow beyond 100 people in 2 months, well, I think it's not as a success as if we grow 200,000 people in 2 months. So we have to summarize. We can pitch 2 problems. One of them is, this is the economical situation of Alaska. We cannot sustain that, or we would like to change from that. What solutions do you see? Maybe somebody comes with an idea about a different approach. And the second problem to pitch will be, we as an organization, we strive to achieve this and this goal. How do you see we could do it faster, quicker, better, and see if somebody comes up with one of those magical approaches that we didn't see, or something that we can utilize.
I think these are all some really interesting ideas. The reason that I had originally encouraged kind of narrowing down is not because I don't think it'd be cool to have, 4 or 5 different verticals. I've actually chatted with Melissa Moody about this quite a bit. When people are doing these types of processes, no matter how excited they are, the more challenging and complex they are, the more it's hard to wrap your brain around all the different problems within that larger challenge in a short period of time, and then actually start thinking through solutions. No matter, I mean, you could be the most brilliant person in the world, and it's still often a lot for your brain to comprehend in like a day and a half. So to help people be able to actually chew on the challenge and start to think through solutions and feel like they did something, having it more narrow can be beneficial. That being said, to Ryan's point, it is helping people think about how do we solve problems in maybe a different way, a more innovative way, more engaging. And so I think that verticals is not bad necessarily. You just want to make things, it's literally just our minds. It's hard for our minds to wrap around, like, for example, like how are we going to solve fiscal challenges or, things like that. That's a lot for our brain to comprehend.
Margot, you cut out there. Were you finished or did we lose you? Are you still there, Margot? We might have lost her for a second. Yeah, it looks, yeah, I see your text message, Margot, but I'm not hearing you.
and then
oh, you were back.
Start thinking through solutions without getting into analysis paralysis.
Margot, are you back now?
Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
Now you're back.
Okay, essentially, just with the challenges, it's not bad to have a number of verticals. We just would want to make things narrow enough that people could actually get some work done. But the thing that I'm most excited about is when people have these great ideas, solutions, what have you. I want to help them get on to the next thing, right? They've had all this excitement, got to do a lot of cool, often design thinking type of work. But then what next, right? And so that's where I think the opportunity lies, is to then connect them with either an organization that pitched and was like, hey, it sounds like you as an entrepreneur or your group are ready to continue working on this idea, maybe start prototyping it. Here's an organization you can work with. Or, hey, Upstart Alpha is coming up. This is a fantastic idea. You should think about applying to go to Upstart Alpha. We'll take you through customer discovery. We'll take you through X, Y, and Z. Or Startup Weekend's coming up. Connecting them from this event to what comes next, I think, is the critical thing, because they need often the tools and support of the community to keep working through this idea. So that to me is one of the most exciting things, is having them get excited, work their way through, and then connect them up to what's next.
And if I can, Margot, I'm curious about your reaction to this. My original thought about this event that we're talking about doing in early September is not a workshop for doing anything in terms of a community sprint. It's something that I see as maybe an hour or 2 event that is basically just the pitches. Perhaps an audience vote on which pitches they thought were most interesting that they are wanting to do. Perhaps it's a networking opportunity for people to then mingle and talk to the people that pitched their ideas. think of this as exactly like a demo day for a accelerator program, where at the beginning, the program does kind of a basic introduction to why we exist, why is this program being done, and then you line up the people that are pitching. They go through the pitches. Each one ends with a short Q&A opportunity for people to throw out questions, clarifications, whatnot. And then afterwards, there's some fun, there's some mingling, some music. And from my standpoint, all we're trying to do here is to change people's awareness of the problems that matter to Alaska and to help them connect up with some resources. I don't see them sitting down at a table and getting out stickies and starting to work on solutions. Now, to somebody else's point in the chat, I mean, maybe there should be a second event following up on this to help people then, actually work on it who want to. But that wasn't the intent of this. It's just simply promoting the challenges, connecting them with who's there. And I think to your point that you were just talking about, I think making sure people know what the next step could be for them, going to a hackathon, going to a startup weekend, going to Upstart Alpha, working on a senior project class, using this as the focus for an entrepreneurship class. The next step is everything. But this event, in my mind, was simply just trying to steer people into this problem set. Does that make sense to you? And is that the same or different the way you're thinking of things?
I actually like that better, if I'm being honest, because I think it's less of a barrier to participate, and you could have a lot more people participate in verticals or other things. So it's a little bit different than I was thinking, but I actually think it would work better to engage people in, for example, I have started working with I can never remember what, CCEL at UAA. It's the Center for like Community and Engaged Learning. Yep. They have a lot of professors that are often either looking for projects or saying, I have students that need projects, but what are those? You invite all those people, right? And say, come. And either they find cool projects or they tell their students to come. I actually like that a lot better, Kai. I think that sounds like a really cool idea.
Yeah, good. Well, and I appreciate that we're, I wanted to make sure we're on the same page there, because to me, I want this just to be a fun event. I want it to have the energy, fun, and enthusiasm of a demo day. But in this case, it's a reverse demo day, because we're demoing the challenges that we want people to get excited about. And we're trying to build some connections in the process. But let me turn it back over to the rest of you for reactions to what we just are talking about.
Yeah, Kai, this is Dick. I'm taking it all in, so I nothing to suggest at this point. It's a lot of different terms, and some I'm aware of, some are new to me, and sometimes people get lost in all of the jargon, the names, what does this mean? And I've seen a number of events, as all of you have, that we have a great amount of energy, and then things kind of just go, die after the event. So we have event after event after event. So I think it's the discussion has been here, like what next? How do you connect people? What's the support they have? How do we make sure we don't lose people? Those are been my experiences. So just offer that up.
I think it sounds like a really great event as you two have kind of formed it up here. It sounds like a great feeder to future work that can be done in Startup Weekend or Startup Week, and with other kind of workshops that we have around here. I do kind of wonder if the format is going to be competitive. In other words, we're going to have multiple people pitching, and people are going to vote on the most pressing problem, or if it's a matter of just kind of presenting as much as possible and then letting people mingle after the fact and find those that want to help them with it.
It's almost 11. Looking for any final thoughts that anybody has on this. I'm going to throw it out there that unless there's strong objection to somebody, that I'm going to push this out for Wednesday the 1st. I think it's an auspicious date. It's the beginning of the fall for many ways. Wednesday has always been a good day for the startup community. It's when we do startup weekends. A number of other events have been done that way. And I'm going to kind of put it out there as a late afternoon event, like about 4:30 or 5 on Wednesday the 1st. But I would invite any final thoughts on yes, no, or whatnot. Otherwise, we also need to wrap up. I know some people will need to run. Any final thoughts on that proposal for a date, time, and any concluding thoughts on what we've discussed in terms of format?
I'd like to just chime in right here and say that I think that the date sounds good, the time sounds good. I'm really liking the proposed format. I'm picturing this almost like a science fair or like a trade show where you can like talk to different folks. I think a pitch sounds great to get people up and hearing about the challenges, but I really like that this provides so much opportunity for meaning making. You know, this gives us an opportunity to have a mixer afterwards and talk about the startup stack so that people can learn about the different places that they can engage, the different organizations that they can engage with, the different ways that they can get involved, and to see that there are real world problems that are out there that they can make a difference on, and how that's going to help shape the next Alaska. So I'm really liking this format.
Cool. Anybody else with any final comments? Going once, going twice?
Yeah, Kai, I'm just, I was looking here. It seems that there's a Chamber of Commerce thing on Monday. Make it Monday. I think it's this coming Monday, the 2nd. Is that am I getting that screwed up?
Yeah, there is one on Monday that I think Gretchen and Aaron are going to be at, talking about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and sharing that with the Chamber community on Monday.
All right, I'll put that in the chat so people can see it.
That's great, thanks. Okay, good. Well, thank you all so much for jumping in today in this discussion. A reminder then, I'll go back to the chat for the AEDC lunch on August 4th, 11:30. Anybody that's interested in, I'll take what I've got there. Second is we've landed on August 8th from 12 to 2 on that event. I hope you'll put that in your calendars and help us when we get some information out to promote that. And then we'll move ahead with this September 1st date for this reverse pitch. And I'll follow up with some more information on asking for help. But you'll see that form I put in there. So thank you for joining in. Does anybody have any final thoughts or comments about anything that they want to share with the group before we wrap up? Going once, going twice. Wonderful. Thanks so much for everyone joining the discussion today. I hope you have a good rest of the weekend and look forward to chatting again more in the future. See ya.